day, everyone! Ito naman tayo muli sa ating DepEd ETULAY TV. Sa ating subject ngayon, Philippine Politics and Governance. Week 2 na po tayo. Okay, handa na ba kayo? Ako, handang-handa na. Dapat handa tayo palagi, di ba? So, pag handa na kayo, get ready because I'm ready. Get ready with your, of course, learning modules. Ano pa man klaseng learning modules, dapat doon kayo titingin, babasahin ninyo, at titingnan nyo as soon as I'm going to discuss. Because all the topics are contained in your learning modules. Next, you have to have your ball pen or any kinds of pen and your notes. And of course, don't forget, focus your attentions to the discussion. Okay? Sa mga tatay, mga nanay, and of course sa mga estudyante, tutok lamang po tayo sa ating discussion ngayon. Okay? Sige. Now, let's have a review about what we have taken last time. Well, our discussion last time was about politics, governance, and government. So what is politics? Politics is the set of activities that relate to decision-making and policies of a government. What is a government? A government denotes elected people. And of course, governance denotes the framework or procedures followed by the government. So these three terminologies are related to each other. There can be no government without politics and governors, or vice versa for all these three. Okay, now, for our week 2, our most essential learning competency, that at the end of this lesson, you are expected to differentiate the political ideologies. Okay, mukhang mapapasabak tayo sa different ideologies. What can you say about this picture that might relate to our topic today? Okay, so this one is very common to us. It's even this study of science, right? So what can you see of this particular picture? Well, you may be right. This is a prism. So what does a prism do? The prism, in the study of optics, is a piece of glass or other transparent material cut with precise angles and plane faces that is useful for analyzing and reflecting the visible light. Ibig sabihin, nakikita niya, nare-reflect niya yung sinag na galing sa visible light. An ordinary triangular prism like this separate white light into 7 different spectra of colors. So, alam niyo ba itong mga kulay na to? Titingnan natin ang susunod na picture. So, what can you say about this? Okay. May mga kulay. May blue, may orange, may green, may red. I'm going to the right, going to the left. So that might look like a rainbow, right? Yes, you are right. And therefore, let's guess red, it has orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. Yes, you're right. These are the colors of the rainbow. The Roger-Biv, there are 7 colors. And all of these, I should say, are the reflection of the visible light. And these are what we call spectra of colors. So how does this relate to our discussion today? So we have the prism, which is a visible light, and now it's now separated in different spectra of colors. Let's look into another picture. Oh, anyway, this illustration of the different what? I think there are different attire or costumes, right? So this might indicate the first one. This one can be, the first can be a teacher, and the second one can be a waiter, or this one can be an engineer, and this can be a farmer, and this one is a nurse, or it can be a midwife. This one, it can be an IT expert or a civil engineer like that, or a teacher or a professor in a university. And this one could be a chef. Well, this one is obviously a doctor or a scientist, right? And this one could be a politician, could be a leader. So all of these have different, okay? Anong sagot nyo? These are different professions. So nakikita niyo ba yung link? Different kulay, different professions, but they are in the same category. Okay, here's another one. Oh, that's diversity. Still many colors. And this diversity, meaning diverse, madami. And all of this, if you can say, may kanya-kanyang kulay at kanya-kanyang sinasabi. Hindi lang natin nasasabi. Yung isa sabi niya D, yung isa I, yung isa VIRSTIY. So this means each individual has different concept and different language maybe or different ideas. So therefore, this picture might be different ideas and eventually any group of person can have their commonalities. And what is this? Yes, you're right. These are different opinions and ideologies. So nakikita nyo ba different colors or spectrum of colors and different professions? And now let's go to different ideologies. And this topic, these pictures relate to our topic today. And that is ideologies. Okay? So idea and the study of the ideas, these ideologies. Okay, so what therefore is an ideology? Ideology is a coherent state of ideas that direct or organize a specific action, and it consists of belief and value systems, a discussion of existing power relationship, an exploration of how political change is achieved in line with these power relations, and an illustration of a desired future, according to Haywood. So, ibig sabihin nito, ideology is a study of ideas in general sense. And this refers to a system of political ideas. These are dotted across the political spectrum, just like colors. So, iba't ibang tao, iba't iba ang kanila mga ideolohiya. And thus, we speak ideologies as persons who are liberalist, fascist, meron din mga conservatives, and mga socialist, communist, and even environmentalist and feminist. And of course, this stem because of the interest. And these people have the common interest and they decide to conglomerate or group themselves, which make themselves having common ideology or ideas. So, ideology, when it is applied to politics, is what we call as political ideology. So, what is political ideology? A political ideology is defined as a set of opinions underpinned by doctrines, values, and perceived moral truths that guide behavior towards a specific social order. So, political ideologies are powerful because they shape the structure of the society, institutions, as well as our way of life. These ideologies are comprised of beliefs and value systems that give rise to political processes. And they also constitute the ideas about change and, of course, the desired future of the society. Now, how did the political ideologies develop? Paano ba nagsimula ang ideology? Well, the meaning of political ideologies have shifted over time and often make sense in the context of the political struggles, though which they may emerge. So struggles as because there will be need of those who are like in the laylayan, no, in the lowmost position in the society, those that need to be heard, and they have what we call political struggles. Because of that, they emerge. And these most ideologies owe their origin and gradual development or develop to some social movements and that look place in the society. So diyan nagsisimula sa mga social movements, no? Okay, may mga iba diyan, feminist, it's a social movement. Diyan nagsisimula ang ideolohiya. Meron ding, okay, magkasama tayo dahil gusto ko rin ang advokasya mo kasi yung liberal ang ating gusto, yung everyone has the right and everyone has to be equal. Gusto ko yan. So, nagkakaroon na ng political ideology. So, ibig sabihin nito, each one of us are different ideology. So, it seems chaotic, right? But we are living in the same society. So, be that modern democracy or in the 17th century, like Marxism and anarchism in the 19th century, and even fascism and national socialism, feminism, these are all ideology. Another ideology which is called as liberation theology in the last century, and environmentalism, pan-Islamism, or globalism in recent decades also emerged. Okay, I show you a picture about political spectrum. If you can see, here on the left are the left wing, and on the right are the right wing. And if you can see, there are colors, so it symbolizes the orientation of the different ideologies according to a right wing or is it a left wing view. So in the left to right politics, the left wing describes an outlook or specific position that accepts or supports social equity, often in opposition to the right side, which is more on social hierarchy and social inequality. So if you can see on the left wing end, the first one is anarchism. And on the right wing, you can see fascism. And on the middle, somewhat liberal, and we have what we call conservatism. And these are the different political spectrum, gaya ng kulay. Di ba? Okay. So, let's move on. Let's talk first about anarchism. These are the major political ideologies and their key tenets. So first, anarchism. Anarchy literally means without rule. A society without an established government, laws, police, or other central authority. And the system is about self-control. So sasabihin natin, this is the most chaotic of all the political ideologies kasi there is no police, walang central agency that will institutionalize the law, and the only law here is the self-control of the few. And individuals can best manage their own affairs through voluntary agreement and cooperation. Kaso lang, tayo naman siguro pag wala tayong tinitinggalang leader na isang leader, magkakanya-kanya tayo. That's why anarchism is called as the most chaotic of all political ideology. Now, with regards to property as a means of tyranny and believe that crime is merely the product of property and authority. Yun ang kanilang paniniwala. No? So the anarchism believes also that the real justice is inherent in the free development of human sociality. Because humans are social. And the natural inclination of human, when unfettered by laws, to live according to the principles and practice of mutual aid. Nagtutulungan, nagko-cooperate, as long as they have self-control. Pero mahirap yon pag walang leader. Diba? Okay, that's anarchism. Now, let's go to communism as a major political ideology. Communism, if you have heard this one, the communism word comes from the French word communisme, meaning for the community or community. So a left-wing ideology based on the socialist teaching of Karl Marx. So ito si Karl Marx is a socialist sa Russia. No, he was a political ideologist of his time, and he also written books about socialism, that there must be a collective ownership and a planned economy. So lahat yan pinaplano and collective. Collective by whom? By those in the government or the few. So it believes that each should work to their capability and receive according to their needs. So meaning, yung tao ay may kanya-kanyang kapabilidad at itong kanilang kapabilidad ay ginagamit para sila makakuha, no, sa kanilang gusto doon sa gobyerno. So meaning, yung labor nila, yung ang gobyerno naman ang bumibili. So common sila. So kung ano yung product niyo binibili namin. In the same way, that's how economy is in communism. So common. So tayo, ako ang bibili, ako ang nagtatanim, kayo ang bibili. So there is a mutual capability of both the government and of course the people. However, it is in opposition to the liberal democracy, obviously, and capitalism. Ayaw na yung mga capitalism, yung mga private entities, kasi yung may hawak ang gobyerno. Kaya siya ang tawag niya ay communist. Advocating instead for a classless system in which the means of production are owned communally, as I say, and private property is, of course, non-existent or severely curtailed. Meaning to say, kung meron man, masyado naman siyang ginigipit, no? Curtailed or minomonitor. So walang freedom. So under communism, there is no such thing as private property, in short. So by contrast, under socialism, individuals can still own property. Kasi may nagsasabi, oh, well, communism is the same as socialism. Might be in a political spectrum, but there are some demarcation between the two. Socialism is more lenient. Why? Because under socialism, individuals can still here own property. But in communism, not. Everything is owned by the government. But in socialism, there's still some sort of private ownership and production. And that is the means of generating wealth. That is communally owned and managed by an elected government of their own party. And that is communism. Okay, alam nyo ba, no? Ito, there are still communist countries. But alam nyo, these countries never accepted, expressly that they are communist because there are always a sort of integration of socialism, more on socialism. Now, these countries like North Korea, China, Laos, Cuba, and Vietnam. Okay, before in the Eastern Europe, most in the 1940s, most Eastern Europe are, of course, under communist regime. But now, since the downfall of communism of USSR, now, wala na, no? Nadidissolve na yung communism sa Eastern Europe. But in the late 1980s and 90s, communism began to crumble. And today, there are just 5 countries. And these ones are the one that I showed you. We have 5 different communist countries as of the moment. So in many cases, these countries, of course, do not call themselves communist, but they say they're socialist. Ironically, however, they may not necessarily follow communist ideology. Indeed, these countries have all introduced at least some reforms to their economies to make them more capitalist. Okay, so socialism. Socialism advocates that the means of production, distribution, and exchange should be owned or regulated by the community. Aba, parang magkapareho sila sa communism. Dahil ang sabi ko, socialism, although reduces disparity in wealth, not only in different areas, but also in all societal ranks and classes. Meron din namang ranks and classes sa society, kaso lang, hindi masyado. Pero sa communist, ay wala talaga, no? There's not evident social classes kasi equal lang lahat. Dito meron din, kaso lang kinokontrol. And citizens in socialism or under socialism, in a socialist society, they rely, no? Reliance on the government for everything from food to healthcare. And these proponents of socialism believes that it leads to a more equal distribution of goods and services and a more equitable society. So the only thing that differs is one with the communism is that this is a form of freedom and, of course, a controlled private entity, a sort of. And the main difference I say is that under communism, most property and economic resources are owned and controlled by the state rather than by the individual citizens. But under socialism, all citizens shall equally in economic resources and allocated by a democratically elected government. Yun lang mang pala. May democratically elected government. Pero sa communist, wala. So, socialist yun. Ibig sabihin, yung mga tao ang nag-vote ng mga representative nila. Okay? Sa conservatism. Okay? A political doctrine that emphasizes the value of traditional, take note, traditional institutions and practices. Kaya tinawag siya na conservative kasi traditional yung kanyang way. And conservatism is a preference for the historically inherited rather than abstract and ideal. So mahilig sila sa tradition and history. Kung ano yung pinagmula nila, yung anong the history must be given more favor. And it is based on experience rather than reason. Okay? And where the ideal and the practice are inseparable. So conservatism also believe that social position and status are only natural. With this, hierarchy is thought to be inevitable. Kaya sa conservatism, yung mga old ways, masyado silang indulge into hierarchy. Ito ako senior, yan junior. Magsimula ka dapat dyan sa junior, sa low position hanggang tataas ka. And its origin is due to the reaction to the radical liberal. So ayaw nila ng liberal thoughts kasi yung liberal masyadong freedom. Gusto nila dapat may hierarchy. Hindi yung kung sino-sino lang gustong kukuha ng posisyon. So, and they are also in reaction to the socialist movement during the early period of industrialization. It was in Britain and Europe. Now, conservatism remains to be a powerful ideological force in the Western societies of today. That's why you can hear in the United States na sabi ng Conservative Party. Meron din sa Great Britain yung Conservative Party. At saka meron din naman liberal. So, titingnan natin kung ano yung liberal. Liberalism, the word liberal is derived from the Latin word as liberty or liber. Liber means free. A political and social philosophy that promotes individual rights, civil liberties, democracy, free enterprise, and equally before the law. So, ibig sabihin, freedom talaga. Civil meaning mga tao may freedom, human rights, no? And of course, free enterprise. Kung gusto mo may capital ka, okay, you can have it as long as susunod ka sa mga patakaran. And of course, equality before the law. So kahit na ikaw ay boss ko or ako ay you are my superior and I am under you, may rights tayo at saka may rule tayong gagampanan. So the liberalism is characterized by representative government, free speech, abolition of class privileges, so wala na yung hierarchy, and of course, the state protection of the individual. In economic terms, liberalism is associated with an unplanned economy, with free and competitive markets, as well as private ownership and control of productive resources. Kaso lang, okay, kahit private entities, pwede nang magnegosyo. That's how liberalism is. And like other political doctrines, liberalism is highly sensitive to time and circumstance. So each country, liberalism is different and it changes in each generation. So ibig sabihin, walang true liberal. It adapts from country to country depending upon the circumstance. Monarchism. This is a form of rule in which the head of state is a king or queen. Monarchy is a political system in which supreme authority is vested in the monarch and an individual ruler who functions as head of state. And it typically acts as a political as well as administrative organization. And as a social group, the nobility known as court society. So pag sinabi monarchy, yun yung mga hari at reyna. Noong araw, sabi pa nila mga emperor. Okay, meron din, that's what we call monarch. The monarch is both head of state and head of government as of now. Wala naman sigurong absolute monarchy. No, most of the monarchy now, countries with monarchy government are not necessarily absolute monarchy or a total monarchy, but only the monarch as a symbol of unity of the country. And that's why it is now becoming evolving into some sort of democratic choice. Okay, so the head of state is the representative of the country and its people, especially in diplomatic affairs, and that's the monarch. The head of the government, by contrast, is the person who leads the government in creating and enforcing policies. So a monarchy is typically called a kingdom. Other terms might include Grand Duchy, as in the case of Luxembourg, or Principality, as in the case of Monaco, or even the city-state, as in the case of Vatican, His Eminence. So let's see with the pictures. These are the examples of the monarch. Queen Elizabeth II of the United Kingdom, King Abdullah II of Jordan, King Salman of Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and King Maha Vajiralongkorn of Thailand. Lastly, fascism. So this is a political movement that embraces far-right nationalism and the forceful suppression of any opposition, all overseen by, take note, authoritarian government, and it subscribes to the idea of a supreme race. Tayo lamang ang supreme, wala na iba, yung race natin. So it opposes Marxism, liberalism, and democracy, and believes the state takes place precedence over the individual's interest. So para sa kanya, yung state, ang mahalaga, yung nation, no, or the country is more important than the interest of the people. So the manifestation of this during the time of Benito Mussolini, which was a fascist dictator in Italy, and Hitler's dictatorship also in Germany. Fascists believed in a unified national community of strength through unity, and as such, individual identity is not as important or that of the social group of community. I'll give you an example of a picture. This was Benito Mussolini of Italy and Adolf Hitler of Germany. They were fascists. No? In fact, they started the World War II. Now, I will show you an ideological chart. Now, if you are some sort of conservative, that means you are free market, and of course, the economy is some sort of little control. And of course, if you are progressive, then you are into the left, meaning to say you have a free market, and however, you are more progressive in terms of controlling the economy. And above is controlling the economy, and below it is the free market. Now, let us check. If you are a socialist, that means you are for equality. But too much equality will lead you to communism that is found on the other end. Now, if you are having a sort of legalism, that means your focus is order, you might end up, if you are extreme, you might end up into totalitarian rule, which is the ultra right wing of the fascists. And this one, liberalism, you will end up, if you are too much liberalist, you end up to be an anarchist if there is no rule or government. And lastly, we have moralism, which is, of course, focused on tradition. And if it's too much of the tradition, it will end up into fundamentalism, just like what happened to ISIS, no? In ISIS, that's in a terrorist group. Okay. So what is your ideology? Let's check. Using the ideology chart a while ago, identify the characteristics of the concerned ideology being pointed in the description. Example, you are progressive and you are controlled economy. So what are you? Of course, you are a socialist or socialism. That is socialism. Next, If you are progressive and you have free market, what are you? You are a liberalist, and that is liberalism. Lastly, you are conservative and you have controlled economy. What are you? You are a legalist, or that is legalism that might lead to fascism. Okay? Now, let's check your understanding. Another activity. Direction, you choose the answer from the choices by inserting the letter of the best answer. Okay? So which ideology advocates the vesting of ownership and control of the means of production and distribution of capital, land in the community as a whole, and everybody is equal? A. Anarchism. B. Conservatism. C. Liberalism. D. Socialism. The answer is socialism. Next, what political ideology embraces an ultra-right nationalism and the forceful suppression of any opposition overseen by an authoritarian government? The answer is what? Yes, fascism, because that has to do with ultra-right. Third, which of the following characteristics best represent conservatism? Is it A, preference for historicity, B, preference for abstract, C, preference for reason, or D, preference for extremism? The answer is A, preference for historicity. Next, anarchism is said to be the most chaotic of all the political ideologies. Why is regarded as such? A, because the government was controlled by dictator. B, because people do not care for each other, thus ruining the society. C, because the absence of government control leads war and conflicts. And D, because the government has little control over the people. Which one is the answer? Right, because the absence of government control leads war and conflicts. Number 5, the last. Which of the following slogans best capture the fascism or fascist ideology? A, from each according to his ability, to each according to his need. B, over himself, over his own mind and body, the individual is sovereign. C, don't limit a child to your own learning, for he was born in another time. D, nothing outside the state, nothing against the state, everything for the state. The answer is, yes, you're right, letter D. So let's have a recap of a synthesis. Therefore, ideology refers to a system of political ideas that are dotted across the political spectrum. Thus, we speak ideologies as liberal, fascist, communist, conservativist, monarchist, socialist, communist, and so on. Political ideology is a set of opinions underpinned by doctrines, values, and perceived moral truths that guide behavior towards a specific social order. Before I leave you and we end this discussion, let's have a reflection about this. We may have plenty of pompous ideologies and schools of thought, but if we don't have an everyday concern for our society, then they are all meaningless. That's Abhijit Nasakar. Thank you so much for these references that helps me a lot in understanding these concepts. And of course, hanggang sa muli, salamat sa inyong pakikinig. We can see you again next week. And goodbye for now. Be safe, everyone.